Hi everyone, this is Dan, and this is Monster MD by Von Klaus, Rise Again Comics #1. You can see that UV spot glow right here. So this is a crowdfunded comic book that I've been following for a while here, and it came in a Gemini mailer like all these crowdfunded comics, and it came with a lot of goodies too. I was actually going to do an unboxing video, but unfortunately Von Klaus put his personal address on the damn package, so I had to kind of ixnay that. I was like, dude, use a P.O. box. But it's all good. This book came in good condition. This is the goodie packs that came with it. So it looks like I got a trading card, a bookmark, a patch, a button, and a print. Which the print is really advertisement for like the next comic book he's got coming out. Also, really cool, I got a extra comic book. This was added on as one of the stretch goals, Shinobi Sasquatch versus Monster MD. It is black and white, so they did kind of save some money there. But hey, free comic book is a free comic book, and nothing wrong with black and white though. I will say this art does need a little more rendering or some zip-a-tone. But that's just my opinion on that one, or 2-second review. So this book, let's get one thing out of the way. This book is pretty late. I remember backing this, and I think it was 2019 was when I backed this book. And obviously it is 2021, so it's been about 2 years or so. So there's no kind of hiding that. That's something that Von Klaus is going to have to improve on next time, is getting out a little quicker. That being said, I can see why it took a long time, because this book is freaking long. This is like a trade paperback right here. So it's like 100 and something pages. I didn't count exactly, but yeah, no, it's a lot of freaking content in here. Really cool. You even get an extra backup story too. So it's like a Ya Boy Zach book where it's perfect bound, but the main story is like something pages, and then you get a 24-page backup story or something. I forget how long Heidi's story is in this one. But I'm not going to review that one, though it is a really good story. I actually think Von Klaus is better at short stories, because I remember reading his short story in the Graveyard Shift supplemental, and it was good. Now, Monster MD, spoiler-free review, it's good. I will say this, a point of criticism of the book is that the book is very modern in the way that it tells its story. A lot of the artwork feels like storyboards in its structure, not necessarily in its quality, but in the structure of how it's kind of telling the story. There's literally like 10 or 12 pages that literally feel like they would be like a montage in a movie or a TV series. Very, very heavy use of dialogue balloons. A lot of exposition within dialogue, which is kind of more of a manga thing, is what I noticed. And the other, I guess, criticism I have of it is just a lot of areas where I think, he could have utilized some other techniques to explain things, because some things are a little confusing in the sequential art from panel to panel. Let's get to the good things. It's a solid story, very engaging. You can tell that Von Klaus really cares about his characters, and really tries to get it through to you, to the reader, how much he kind of enjoys it. That really helps out a lot when the creator is this passionate about their book, and you can tell it oozes out of like pretty much every panel and every word he throws into it. Oh yeah, the other thing, a lot of pop culture references, which I was kind of a little bit annoyed by, but what is really cool is the structure of the story. A lot of callbacks and really cool storytelling techniques that he uses in this book. With that said, let's get into it. Everything after this is now spoilers. So my recommendation, it's still available, $25, you can still pick it up. So now let's get into spoilers here. So the book kind of starts off sort of in action right here. This is Dr. Wyatt Black. He is the Monster MD. He had to use the gloss finish, didn't he? It's all right. And he's treating this patient, ends up having to knock out this werewolf and put him out, and then you get sort of the opening right here. I get a really good feeling that Von Klaus has to have like a movie or cinema background, because everything does kind of feel very cinematic in the way he approaches this book. And then you get the introduction of his assistant. This is Heidi. She is an invisible woman, hence smoking, and the only thing that gets lit up is the smoke in her lungs. which plays out some pretty interesting puns. So you get the background. He essentially acts as a doctor, sort of moving doctor in a way, for monsters and all the crazy things that go bump in the night. But he's pretty tired of it. It doesn't really pay a lot, and it's a lot of stress and danger. So he's thinking about stopping it. But they get a call, and he goes off to go handle another patient. And he runs into a golem. Has to fight this golem right here, the poop jar. So Von Klaus's humor at times can be really funny, and then sometimes it can kind of miss. I'll wait for other people to kind of comment on it. I kind of liked certain jokes that he plays, and then some of it is like, just flies over you a little bit. I will say this: I do think he needs to like tone down the references. Just because the references might make a lot of sense to him and maybe in his circle and his friends, it's not necessarily going to work for everybody. So I think generating humor without using any kind of cultural references, I think is the better way to go. Yeah, the art's pretty good. So the art has a bit of a manga feel to it, not like crazy. There's sort of a stylistic feel. I think the artist is European, maybe Italian. It's pretty solid though. I like the art for the most part. It's got a really good style to it. Colors are pretty good too. But so he ends up running into this statue, which gives him basically freaks him out because it reminds him of a pretty bad experience. And then we go into Dr. Black's background story for the most part. So this is him back in school. He's getting chided by his professor, and he's kind of messing around with dead bodies and dissecting them. And this is the first time he runs into a monster, in this case a revenant, which is sort of an interesting concept that Von Klaus has here. It's essentially an undead person that cannot die till they've performed like a good deed or a certain deed before they can pass on, which plays a part in this whole thing because later on they become kind of friends or closer or whatever it is. I'm not sure. And then he runs into this guy, the essential villain or antagonist, who proceeds to cut his arm off, which is how he ends up with this thing right here. He gets tossed out of building, about ready to die I think he's not really about to die, he just doesn't have his arm anymore. And then his Revenant lady friend basically passes on and gives him back his arm as her good deed. Which is a pretty cool concept. So with the background now set, what happens is essentially a montage, and these essentially act as almost like single strip stories. So every single one has the X-ray going on. That's why Von Klaus has to have like a movie or cinema background, because this is something that you can imagine in a movie, that sort of montage kind of run sequence that movies tend to like. Yeah, see, it's a lot of references, and some of it you'll get, and then some of it, you might not get. So it's not necessarily bad, but I would kind of tone it down a little bit here, because it goes on for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10 pages of that sequence, and it's not necessarily bad because luckily all these characters he calls back to in the end. So it ends up having a purpose, but some of it not necessarily hits while you're going through it. When I was reading through this, the middle part of this book was actually kind of starting to become a chore. But luckily, once you get to the end, it gets really exciting. So he's got one final patient, which turns out to be a succubus, and this fight scene's actually really hilarious. I actually enjoyed this one a lot. So ends up beheading the succubus and defeating her. Though I will say this panel, I guess this sequence right here, I didn't get it. He throws the defibrillator and then somehow it ends up outside her head. I don't know. I didn't understand this, but I think the ultimate deal is he shocks the hell out of her. So, there's that. So he ends up having a hissy fit and not wanting to go on. They get a call for another patient, and he says, "I'm done being a doctor." So Heidi's like, "Well, fuck you. I'm gonna go save some people." Visit Judas. and it heads out. And then Heidi heads over to help out what ends up being a revenant, but she gets jumped by, Mr. Creepy Guy from before. So Dr. Black heads out to save the day, runs into her. And what essentially occurs is, basically the final showdown in the book. Basically him coming back and facing his original antagonist and fears and all this. Man, the glare is like really... I have like the lights upward, but it's not working so well here. I will say this. One thing I wanted to make as a point, right, is sound effects and dialogue, right? Like, what kind of weirded me out is like these images by the artists are very, very powerful for the antagonist basically taking this girl away because he's going to eat her, right? She's like tearing up and everything. But the only sound you read is dialogue, right? And what's kind of interesting to me is like, for me personally, I would imagine like, she would be screaming either as a dialogue balloon or maybe you make it as a sound effect like word art and whatnot. But the only thing in here is like zip, and I was like, it's like the last thing I would imagine right now is the zipper. I would imagine her screaming like, please help me, I'm going to die, or he's going to eat me or something like that. Just kind of like a minor criticism. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's still, the art is so good that it doesn't really matter. But just kind of something that I was kind of looking like, I don't know if I like agree with just doing that sound effect. But yeah, no, Black tries to bargain with him. And it doesn't end so well because he basically keeps taking and taking, and eventually Black has to fight him. And it turns out you get a callback to previous events. This is actually a really cool concept. He got bit by like multiple monsters, and he ends up basically absorb, or they like kind of how like vampires make more vampires by biting people, and werewolves make more werewolves by biting people. Well, everyone bit his, undead arm, and his undead arm keeps getting, like, all of these powers. So it's kind of interesting that way. So they get into a fight. Heidi gets injured. And then they get into the graveyard where they get into an even bigger fight. And you can see Von Klaus has a lot of manga influences here. The way this fight kind of plays out is very similar to the way manga fights play out. It's a lot of exposition dumping and long monologuing by the two people engaged in a duel. And it's not necessarily bad. The action's pretty solid right here. I like the effects. They can get really gringy, or I like grudgy, or dirty. Am I making up words? I think I'm making up words. But it's pretty interesting and exciting. And then he cuts off his arm, and you get back and forth. And finally, the fight ends with him basically shoryukening him into a fence. And then he cuts his head off at this point. And at that point, Dr. Black runs back to Heidi, takes her back, he gets surgery. It's actually really cool effects. I really like this. This is kind of interesting. And it plays pretty well to a character, right? This character was only really defined by her dialogue for most of it because she basically looks like a mummy or invisible. And she kind of looks really interesting in these last couple panels. And then you get the big turnaround, which is all those monsters we just saw in the montage coming back and being worried about Dr. Black. And then Dr. Black realizing, you know what, I'm helping you guys out is a good thing. I like it, So you get the final resolution. He finally uses caption boxes, but it's basically just him voice-overing it, right? Again, almost like a movie in a sense, right? There's a very cinema movie feel to Monster MD, and it kind of permeates the whole book. It's not bad. It's just I kind of prefer my comic books to be more comic booky. But that being said, it's a good story, and for what I got, like freaking 100 bajillion pages, plus this for the usual $25. This felt like $25 well spent. So props on Von Klaus for that. I got to hand it to him. This was a great value. Yeah, you also have the backup story if you're more interested on Heidi, the invisible nurse. But yeah, no, that's Monster MD. He signed it right here. Hey, Von Klaus, Eric Weathers. Anyhow, that's the video. Let me know what you think. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit the bell for notifications. If you have any comments about this video or Monster MD, leave it down below. And I will see you next time.